that the next municipal election for both municipal elections and school board elections is on October 26th. I think that's about 27 weeks, probably 6 months from this week. So we really need the community to be really thinking about this from here on in. We're really encouraging people to be considering to run for council, run for mayor, run for councillor, run for school board, all very important positions, and we really want to encourage diversity, both culturally and gender-based for all levels. So again, October 26th, start thinking now. You got lots of time to be figuring that out. And it's a very rewarding career, and your community needs you. So I'm going to be saying that at the beginning of every council meeting. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's very important. So without further ado, Madam Clerk, first item of business.
Roll call, Your Worship. I have taken the roll, and all members of council are present, including Councillor Fawcett, who is joining us virtually tonight.
Very good. I see him there. So thank you for signing in. Next item, please.
Oops, sorry, I just lost my page here. We would need a motion to adopt this evening's agenda, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Lupke, seconded by Councillor Cullen. Any changes or additions? Not seeing any. Going to call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
The order of recognitions, Your Worship.
Okay, and this wasn't specified on the agenda because we wanted to make this a bit of a surprise, but I received a letter and a piece of hardware from CAMA, which is the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators. So this is the Administrators Association, Municipal Administrators Association for all of Canada. And received a letter that indicates that CAMA's Long Service Recognition Award Program recognizes and celebrates the dedication to public service and municipal management of our members, which is a significant priority for our association. The awards are based on the number of years of full-time paid employment in municipal government in a management capacity as a chief administrative officer or reporting directly to a CAO. And they are granted at 10 years and then in 5-year increments. And we have enclosed a 15-year pin for 15 years of service in municipal service in a management capacity to our city manager, Mr. Ron Bowles. So I didn't tell him that we were doing this tonight, but I'm going to kind of catch him off guard. Here's all the paperwork. And the pin. I don't know if they can change the camera over to your spot here, Mr. City Manager. Very. Yeah, so it's always nice to mark these milestones, and certainly a very challenging but rewarding career, and so 15 years is a great milestone, and we're glad to have you at the helm of our corporation at this point, Mr. Bowles, so congratulations once again. So next item, Madam Clerk.
Confirmation of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held April 4th.
Moved by Councillor Cameron, seconded by Councillor Parker. Any errors or omissions? And seeing none, we'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Under the order of presentations, Your Worship, we have Sandy Trudell, the Director of Economic Development, regarding the Brandon Economic Restart Program.
Very good. And I know she's got a fellow presenter with her.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see Mr. Cooper hiding in the background there.
Welcome to Mr. Barry Cooper, President of the Brandon Chamber of Commerce. This is kind of a joint project, so welcome to you both this evening.
Good evening. We're pleased this evening to be able to present to you an overview of our, what we believe to be an extremely successful Brandon Economic Restart program. So as mentioned, I have my colleague and friend, Barry Cooper. He's the president of the Brandon Chamber of Commerce, and it is with their support that this program was made possible. So I've got 4 short slides, and then I'll change over to Barry, and he'll share some comments as well this evening. So basically, the Brandon Economic Restart program was a growth-oriented program that ran for roughly 6.5 months, and it was solely dedicated to businesses in Brandon that had been negatively impacted by COVID and wanted to change from a very trying period to one of optimism as they looked to make investments into the future. So as we referred to this program, it was BURP, and we marketed BURP through our social medias, through our website. The Chamber did direct mails, the Economic Development Office did direct emails, and we did a lot of one-on-one outreach to our businesses. Basically, the program was very simple when you looked at eligibility requirements. So they had to be legally operating in Brandon since July 12th of 2020. They had to demonstrate that their net income had been negatively impacted by COVID. They had to invest a minimum of 10% of their funds in order to trigger the city's contribution, and they had to have paid employees on staff. So as I mentioned when I introduced Barry, this was truly a partnership program. So without the Chamber's support and, quite frankly, the original idea, this program would not have got off the ground. So Brandon City Council saw fit to invest $250,000 into the opportunity for future growth for our businesses. We had 115 branded businesses that submitted applications. We had 18 Brandon Chamber of Commerce members and volunteers that helped with the original concept of the program, as well as they went through and vetted applications and provided recommendations back to the economic development staff. And then, of course, the economic development staff with the city was responsible for creating the program. We developed all of the materials, we administered the program, we did the reconciliation and the validation of the investments that were made, and of course paid out once done. So basically, of the $250,000, we allocated $233,711. So basically 93% of the available funding. This money then triggered investments from our local businesses totaling $551,000. So very successful in our estimation. So when we look at the program itself, of the 115 applicants, 97 of them met eligibility criteria, so 84% of the received applications. They came from 10 different sectors of our economy, and those businesses employed just about 1,100 employees. Basically, of the 97 grants that were eligible, we've paid out 74% of those grants, and we are just having the tail end of the business investments being wrapped up, and so those will be moved out, probably totally cleared out within the next month at the latest. So the applications that came in were very nicely spread between the 4 eligible categories of furniture and equipment, marketing, professional services, and technology. Not unexpected, the heaviest portion of the investments were made into marketing, and that's something that we would have expected to see when you look at this transition from 2 very trying years into looking forward to what is the future potential and growth for their businesses. So with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Barry Cooper. Basically, just want to leave with Council our true appreciation for allowing us that opportunity to take what has been a very trying time for our businesses, make grants available that motivated them to switch from a what we'll call existing and surviving mode into one of a growth-oriented, thriving mode. And your investment allowed us to do that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Barry.
Your Worship, City Council, I was a little concerned when I saw that slide that was Sandy and me up there. So I'll leave it for you guys to decide who is who. So again, thank you for the opportunity. Our last meeting on this in this room was July the 12th, and it's hard to imagine that it was that long ago. And as we all know, a tremendous amount of things have changed since then. At that time, I stood here and I asked for help for Brandon business. And I remember the words I said, which was that we were tired of playing defense, and it was time for us to get the damn ball and play offense. So what I'd like to share with you is that Burp, while it hasn't created touchdowns, it has absolutely strung a bunch of first downs together, if you'll allow me the analogy. And so it's putting us in a lot better position. And I think that was really the goal behind this program. We've seen things brighten up. We've seen businesses reopen. We've seen, obviously, a lot of changes in the restrictions. We still have businesses struggling. We still have businesses struggling with labor shortages. They're struggling with supply chain issues, which are crippling right now. Inflation, higher interest rates, and, of course, the prospect of having to pay back government loans and before they're really in as good a shape as they want to be. Now, Sandy shared a lot of numbers with you folks, and I think, and a lot of the analogies, and I think that's really great because it gives you a bit of a feel for what's happened. I had the good fortune, to get to read a number of the proposals as they came through and vet them. And I'd like, first and foremost, to just take a quick moment to note all the work of our past presidents that were involved in vetting these as well. We had a strong group of really important to this community people who took time out to walk through these and make sure that we targeted the money. That was one of the keys we talked about last July, was that the money would be spent not as shotgun, not just shoveled out, but with the people that really needed it. So we worked hard, and I think the numbers showed that we didn't just give the money to everybody. We did actually walk through them very carefully and vet them. The businesses, every single business that applied for and received money was economically hurt by COVID. And I think that's a real critical thing. That even though they were really hurt, they were still willing to invest money in future growth. And that gives you a bit of an understanding of the program. Burp was focused on the investment in growth and really in the long game. Spend money up front to grow your business, employ more people, and in the long run, pay more taxes. So what I saw was businesses that looked to invest in the physical. We saw patios, we saw training facilities, improved customer service areas, and we saw selling floors. We saw businesses that invested in technology, better websites, in some cases their first website. And for business nowadays, it's going to be really hard to survive without that. So that was a real little push it gave a lot of people to spend the money. And you saw that they spent twice as much money as what you put into this program. Computer equipment, new inventory control systems, all under that technical branch of things that long game-wise are going to make a huge difference to business. We saw business investing in education. They hired management consultants, people that could look inside their business. Often, especially in a really small business, we say that you're so busy working in your business that you never have time to work on your business. COVID forced everybody to work on their business or you don't have a business. And so in a lot of cases, this program gave people that little push to reach outside of their comfort zone and ask for help. And I think that was a real advantage that came out of this program. The thing I saw most out of these, and I love using these words because I think they matter, was resilience and grit. People got kicked in the face and they stood up and said, I'm not done yet. And I'm really proud of our community for that. I'm really proud of our business community for that. So with that, I'd like to thank you folks at this table. I'd like to thank your leadership team. Certainly Brandon Economic Development, Sandy's a rock star, and she continues to prove that in all the work that she does on our behalf. From the Chamber's perspective, it's always a pleasure working with you folks, and we appreciate this program and what it's done for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the presentation, I gather, but I think there may be some questions, as often there are. So I'll just open the floor for that before I make any other comments. So we'll open up the floor for any questions that councillors may have. Not seeing anybody jumping forward. I will make some comments and just provide some thank yous. Mr. Cooper will recall that we had early on meetings, started with some meetings with myself, then we involved our Audit and Finance Committee to meet with the Chamber group, and we had several of those until we kind of cobbled out what looked like something that could get some traction, and so I want to give Chamber full marks for really kind of hatching this idea and, you know, kind of coming to the rescue of the business community that, as you put it, were really on defense and kind of back on their heels, and, you know, we're just trying to find any way we could as a community to help people come out the other side. And, you know, while this wasn't individually, you know, kind of big money, you know, the idea was that certainly there would be components that just could help a business, you know, find new markets and, you know, new customers, new ways of delivering their product, you know, while they could. So obviously that they responded, and great many, it was 97 applications did come forward, and so just a really successful program. And my view, it would be the anticipation that that investment would live on for many years, as you indicated, kind of websites or new patios or whatever the case was. So it wasn't just a kind of a short-term Band-Aid. You know, this should hopefully help a business kind of stay on its feet and then continue to do better for years to come. So thanks to the Chamber, and I might add to your team of people that stepped up to help vet these applications. You know, again, you know, very savvy business people that volunteered their time to step in and do that on behalf of the community. So extend that back from council to all of your team. And again, I'd be remiss if I didn't also provide kudos to our own Economic Development Department. Again, who sadly has gotten too used to having to just sort of drop things and pick up a ball, and this was kind of yet another one, and they came through in flying colors by being able to administer this program, and it was very successful. So thank you to all involved on that. So again, if somebody had a question prompted up, I'll not Councillor Cullen, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to our presenters. The one thing that I had talked to a few people that had applied and received some of the funds, that I just wanted to maybe touch base on the fact that there was also, on behalf of the Chamber, some mentorship that went along with that. It wasn't just the money itself, it was actually a group of people that stepped up to the plate to actually help some of these businesses sort of formulate what it was that they were looking to do and how they were going to do it in a very trying time when, you know, your back's up against the wall. And again, the money, in most cases, the two cases that I talked to, people that had received the money, they were more thankful for the mentorship than they were for the actual money itself. You know, just the fact that the business people were willing to step up and help them out. So maybe you could touch base on that, because I think it's, again, it was more than the money especially on the Chamber side. We may have brought some of that, the funds to the table, but the expertise that was brought on the Chamber side was extremely valuable.
Thank you, Councillor Cullen, and that's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that out. And I believe I've got Councillor Fawcett online, so hopefully people that run the technology, oh, she's coming. Hang on a minute there, Jeff. Bear with us here. Here's his face. Try that now, Councillor Fawcett.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Very good.
Right on. Thank you again, through your worship. I don't want to reiterate what both you just said. But we did get some of this idea from the Winnipeg Chamber and what they were doing in Winnipeg, and we made it kind of our own project. Chamber did a great job. I just want to sort of, because we're speaking about the Chamber right now, give a little recognition to Carolyn Kincaid, who is stepping down after about 14 years on the Chamber as the Chamber GM, and the role she played in all that too. So putting us together, showing that we can collaborate with different community organizations to make things better for everyone. So all good. Well done, Barry. Well done, Sandy.
Thank you, Councillor Fawcett, and good of you to begin to recognize Carolyn Kincaid. I'm sure there'll be more opportunities for that as the time moves forward, but thanks for bringing that up, Councillor Fawcett. So again, any other questions or comments from any other members of council? Not seeing any others. I think that covers it. Thank you very much. A motion to receive would be in order, please. Councillor Parker, seconded by Councillor Frangie. Any discussion? Call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Community comments or feedback, Your Worship?
And again, happily, I think this is perhaps the first time we've been able to do this in practically 2 years. So this is a section on council's agenda that we do hold open to any member of the public that would like to provide comments or feedback on any item on tonight's agenda, and a total of 15 minutes is allowed for this. Certainly we do have other presenters that are here on other matters of the tonight's agenda, but this is kind of open for anyone that wanted to comment about tonight's meeting. And not seeing any tonight, we can move on to the next item, please.
Under the order of delegations, Your Worship, we have a presentation from Colleen Sigurdsson on behalf of the Park Community Centre.
Very good. Welcome, and come on ahead.
Council. Thank you. Just gonna look around, say hello to everybody. I don't know anybody here. I know a couple people. I shouldn't say I don't know anybody, but not the greatest speaker. But anyways, I'm here with our Park Community Board. I started with the Park Community Board 2-3 months ago, and some really wonderful things have come to light or whatnot, but it is a charity board. I found out it's a wonderful, great charity board. So today, I'm just going to read a little bit. Maybe it'll be easier. I won't stumble on my words. But
Just relax, take your time.
yeah. We're a charity board, and we're very thankful for the time today and appreciate your counsel. We want you to know that we're a very active board, or well, we're trying. We're really trying. We have some new members. I don't know all of the protocol for everything, but I've started to apply for some really cool grants because we're a charity. And I'm learning some things. So we got some ITI grants. There's a foundation grant. There's another grant coming up in June, which is incredible. And I just want to say I'd like to work with our community and work together with the council and help create a stronger community. And there's many more charity grants that, as a volunteer, I'm willing to apply for and support and go forward and things like that. I put a little package together. I didn't know how to communicate this so well. And so this package can stay here. But we support, there's some things going on. This dates back to 2017, this little file. And so we support a new build. There's some things about that. We understand, but from the letter, we don't want to be a community that, or a community center that jeopardizes other communities' centers. And I don't know what's planned, but if there's money for our community center that'll affect somebody else's, that's not good. So we don't want to lose other community centers, and especially time of all the things we've done. Everybody's trying to get through all this. So we just asked for transparency to work together. We were unsure of the sudden amendment that comes on later today for the new build. So if we could ask for a proposal for the repairs, ask for a tender to go out for the repairs, and if possible, ask for a tender to go out for the new design. There's some differences in opinions on the board, but so in this little, I'll just go really quickly because then I don't know where to leave this here. So in this little package, it starts back in 2017, the park community, there was an inspection by the planning and development. So I don't know who was all involved here at the table. And then in 2019, there was an engineering report. And 2021, there was a proposal from Sneath that they put together some numbers. And then there's our letter to the mayor, just to kind of our concerns. And that was a group letter. That wasn't just, I know I signed it, but it was a group letter. Then there's the city's amendment for later today. So, yeah, the Park Community Center is kind of under, there's some things going on there. I don't know if everybody knows what's going on, but there's some building repairs that need to get done. I don't know if you'd want me to talk about some of the grants that are available, but there's some. I think I don't have too much more to say because I could hand in this, but I know we want to work with City Council. I don't know how much community effort's been involved with the park community, and, well, I do, but I'd like to be more involved. I'd like to, if it's possible. I don't think it needs to be green space. There is kind of green space. It's a beautiful, I have a botany degree, and there's a beautiful botany program that's already going on there. We could expand on that. We're full of bookings. We're double booking. It's been hard to, Eldon's been really good too because we can only have 40 people in there at a time. So, when they did the Ukrainian thing, they had to kind of watch the door and only let so many people in. So there's, we can only grow so much. We can only do so much with the structure itself. But yes, there's been some wonderful bookings. Everybody's calling to see if they can come into the community center. So there's some gray areas on whether we can come or not. That's what we would like to talk about as the City of Brandon. The City of Brandon, we're just the looker-afters of the building. You guys tell us what to do, but we're there to support the building. And so whatever works, we'd like to work as a community to. That's about it, unless anybody else wants to add to something. But yeah, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. And yeah, if we can meet, maybe if we can meet in another month again, or we can talk about get out to putting the building. I did read the numbers from Sneath, put together a really great package. So I don't know if you know that, but they did put together a really cool package with all the budget numbers. Came $313,000. So that was a really cool proposal, but that included roofs and kitchens. And I do have a lot of building experience. I've been a general contractor. I've built a lot of buildings. So I was like, we could just throw in a beam, and building something isn't new to me. I know a beam's $5,000, yeah. So we need a couple beams, we need a couple things done. But I don't know the extent the city wants to go to. So granted, a new building would be really awesome. I'm just saying that it's not a necessity. It's not something we're stomping our feet over, saying this is something we need today. But yeah, I do know a lot about building. I've been in building and construction for many years. Anyways, thank you for your time, and I was wondering if I could leave this with the, I didn't make a PDF of it, but I could, if,
You have a hard copy, that's fine.
yeah, okay. So then I can just leave this here. That's all I have to say, so.
Okay, well, thanks for coming out and sharing your perspectives. There might be a few questions, you don't mind answering a
Yeah, I
few and
hope
whatnot.
so.
So leading off with the ward councillor, Councillor Desjardins, so go ahead.
Thank you, to your worship, to the presenter. Colleen, I applaud you for your courageous
Trying.
effort tonight, because, you're here to represent the community center, and you're not a high-priced lawyer.
No.
And we get a lot of those here who are very persuasive, right? And so I'm going to try not to lead you, because that's not my role, but I want to try and clarify what you're here for. And what I think you're here for is to say, like, you don't want to see the Park Community Center demolished. You would like, and I just want to make sure that we're clear, the board is in favor of the Park Community Center staying and either being repaired or rebuilt.
Yeah, we kind of, repair would be fine. That's
And
what the
seeing
board
the
was saying.
repair taken off the table, so to speak, is there might be a fear that the build would end up being too expensive, and then council would be forced into a position of having to, decide not to go ahead,
Not to go
and
ahead.
therefore we'd be demolishing the park.
And
right?
that's why I want to really stress, I found a really amazing grant. You can look it up. It opens June 4th. The minimum is for 350,000 and the maximum's $1 million. So we can maybe do this together. I don't know, but I don't know what the budget, I don't do budgeting but I can help with that if there's something. But yeah, that's what is definitely something to.
Yeah, sorry,
said.
Your Worship, it might be, we might have to get creative with how we're going to fund things moving forward to save the park. But I did want to ask one question about the bookings, because I think there is a concern on council and administration that the utilization of the Park Community Center just isn't where it needs to be for us to consider, protecting or restoring the park to its, former glory. And so we haven't really seen any updated numbers of bookings. And like, it would be helpful to have some of that for council, especially
This is the
today
fellow,
when we're
he's
making
so
a pretty
good at that
important
part.
decision.
Well, we've had our hands tied for 4 years by the city. Engineering said we can only have 40 people in the building. So we've been working around it, plus COVID. But we've had 30 to 40 bookings every month for the park, and they're all small numbers, but they're all for an hour or 4 hours or a top work party, whatever, right? So we're doing the best we can to keep it open, funding coming in.
And my next one, this will probably be really hard for you to answer clearly, but if the park was brought back up to code and were able to bring in the 100 or 140 that it was initially built for, what would that change in your bookings? Like, have you had to say no to people because of the numbers, and how often does that happen?
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
So we've had to, probably since I took over the bookings, when Jen and Noel left, I think we've probably turned away five different events that we couldn't have because of numbers. So, and then other ones were limited to, like when we had the Art for Ukraine venue there, they had to limit how many people were in the building at any given time.
And then maybe one more question quickly, if I could. There has been some fundraising on the side. Do you guys have any numbers how much you received when you did the park celebration last?
Oh, I don't know that number.
Yeah, it's about $5,000 or $6,000.
Okay. Okay.
So we raised. And then there was some money came through CERB somehow. I'm not sure exactly how that happened. That was before I came on the board. It was something that Jan and Noel went and got funding through. So right now, Park Community Center has a fairly healthy bank account of $26,000, and goes nowhere to be it goes nowhere near what we would need to build, right? But not really our building to rebuild. I'd like to reiterate, sorry if I may, because we as a board do not want to see the building torn down. We have not been, city people have not gotten a hold of us. They've not been open. They've not provided us any information. And then we come here as a delegation tonight, and this morning we get a proposal from the city that says exactly the opposite of what we want as a board. All of a sudden, after 4 years, this comes out of the blue. Nobody from city council, city administration contacted our board to discuss any of this with us. Done with that, sorry. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Thanks for that. You're finished, Councillor Giarley. Okay, now Councillor Chaboyer, then Councillor Fawcett. So go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that you already answered my question. About a month ago, Council met to discuss the Park Community Centre, and we went over all the reports from engineers and the deficiencies of the building. And my understanding was at that meeting that they were to meet with your board to go over the same presentation that we received. And I just wanted clarification on that you haven't met with the administration about that.
I met with, I met, you know, the report that's going on today?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
They talked about it that
No,
meeting.
this is a report on the
Presentation
deficiencies
that-
of the building that council, it was about a month ago that we had a meeting about it, and we went over.
Yes,
photographs
we
and-
were never met with. We haven't received any information from the rec, what it's called. Anybody from
Parks and
city.
Recs, yeah.
Yeah, Parks and Rec.
Parks
yeah.
and Recreation.
Okay, and, could I ask one more question, Your Worship? The other thing is, I noticed after COVID, we're kind of learning how to live with this process. Do you feel in Brandon, the community, there's a craving for more cultural events? Because I know in my years of experience, the Park Community Center was a special place for all types of cultural events. And do you find that when you're getting calls, I know that you're limited on the size, that there's definitely an appetite for music, food, entertainment, crafts, different events that used to happen historically?
Yeah,
That building?
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we're getting calls on things like that. The board actually put on an outdoor concert last September. And it was, for COVID times, it was fairly well received. We raised, just had a give what you want through the gate. We raised just under $2,000 for people that came through the gate to support us. And it was just a really nice afternoon, evening of outdoor music and people sitting around enjoying it. And so things like that is what we are going for. Things like that is what Park has always been about. So culture and community.
Arts, could have
Yeah.
beautiful arts, and to my understanding, there used to be a rink there, but we could even, there's beautiful, like we could build a wood rink, like it doesn't need to be a full scale, we could just build a little rink if we wanted to, if we can get together again. And
Yeah, when Community Gardens went in, when the rink was not used for a few years, Community Gardens went in there. And so now if we wanted to flood just for a skating rink,
Yeah,
there's room
lots
to do
of
it.
room.
There's room to do it. We just have to
Yeah.
put up boards during the fall and flood. So that's one of the things we've talked about doing, but, through COVID and everything.
Okay, thank you. We have Councillor Fawcett, then Councillor Cameron. So go ahead, Councillor Fawcett.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. I'm good and clear. Can you hear me
Yeah.
again? Okay, thank you. And thank you to the presenters for coming. because we do appreciate getting feedback. We appreciate that there's a board there again, which is nice. I do have a question though. I really like hearing feedback of people that like arts and culture in the community, and I just want to know, like the board, they've obviously struggled with the board of the Park Community Center for a long time. It was presented to council to remove it. We had a green space plan for the area. So the board members that have got together, I don't know if everybody lives in that area. I just want to know, would you be willing to still talk to council and others in our Parks and Recreation Department about doing stuff around the community?
Oh, yeah. I'm 20 years down there. My brother lives there. My bestest friends, they live down the street. I know lots of folks that live downtown in that area. And absolutely, there's lots of wonderful, that's why I don't think Brandon downtown's a bad place. Like I really, granted, I think any part of the city can have troubles, but granted, we could, but I think it's a great spot for a community, and there's good people that can come to this community and have come to this community, gotten themselves married or, birthday parties or whatever, what you do at a community. And I think this would be a great dance place. There's the dance girls that come. There's lots of things that could happen there's lots of good people downtown, and I think
and I agree with you. And actually being on the downtown committees and being involved in a lot of downtown stuff, I got to admit, I don't consider that to be kind of downtown core by any stretch.
No, I don't think it's that downtown. I know it's part of the Heritage District, but it's not part of
And that's not sort of what I'm asking. I guess I'm asking more, is the boards, are they physically attached to the building? Are they physically attached to the location? Or the community would say, you know what, because we do have a private investor looking at doing sort of a music studio space downtown. We have all of our dance places downtown. And if we talk further with what your goals were, do we have places in the community we could do all those things? Like the Ukraine piece that we did there, that was great. It was awesome that it was at the Park Theater or Park Community Center. If it wasn't there, could we have done it anywhere else, or was it the only place?
I do know my younger brother and his wife, they ran a party business, and they said there's nowhere in Brandon that, they were so limited on places where gatherings could happen and things could happen. And so I think it's in need. They were constantly doing bookings. They were going out of town for bookings. They were going to rivers. They were going because there's nowhere to go. Everything was booked, or there isn't places for anybody. So I think there's a lot of, I know Ty now runs the business, and he's looking for places all the time to where he can have parties, where he can have gatherings, where can we get together. And humans love to get together. And
Councillor Fawcett, if you're asking if there's a need, there's a definite need.
Yeah, there's a need.
And we do think Park is part of downtown. Park is part of that whole restoration area of downtown.
By the university too.
Yeah, university right there, and it's an underprivileged people that live in that area. A lot of students live in that area. People that want to have community. So. That's what we're trying to provide.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm happy to hear that, but I do hope that you would continue to talk to us about trying to do those things all over the city, and particularly the downtown core, where we're doing a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah. And you asked if we're tied to the building. Well, of course we're tied to the building. The building has been there since 1961, I think, or earlier, and. When we had Sneath do a walkthrough, they did the full proposal, which was presented to council or to the rec board, and we had no feedback from rec board about that. But their engineers say that building is nothing wrong with it. They're going to come in, fix the floors, fix the ventilation, put a commercial kitchen in it, redo the back rooms. It's all in their proposal. If you guys just look at it, you'll see it's there. And I don't understand where the rec board is coming from saying that the building is no good.
Okay, and Councillor Cameron is next.
Thank you, through your worship, through you to the presenters and the members of the board as well that come out this evening. Obviously, you know, I know a couple of folks for sure that are residents of that neighborhood and right around the Park Community Center. From a rental standpoint, I know we often kind of talk of these rental locations as being sort of neighborhood versus globally in the city, so to speak. Do you have any sort of inclination of your rental base? Are they people that are from the Park Community Center neighborhood, or are they sort of spread out all over the city? And not that that's a bad thing, but I just wanted to know if, you know, obviously if we have a center there that's driving that cultural space and it's people that are around there and accessing that helps, you know, potentially make a decision on it. So.
For sure, we have both. We have people that come from away and people that, we actually offer a lower rental rate if you live within our area, right? If you live within the area of Park Community Center or the downtown core, you get a preferred rate from us. But people that are renting, we had this one, sorry, got canceled because because of the snowstorm. But we had a family coming from Morden, and they were coming here to have Easter with their family in Brandon, and they rented the Park Community Center. That one got canceled, but the one on Sunday went, and it was the same thing. People from mom and dad are still in Brandon. All the kids come back to Brandon, and where do they go? They can't go to mom and dad's place, it's too small now, so they rent the Park Community Center. It's rented out like that for all the time. Even through COVID, it was rented out like that to people in the community that want to get together and have a few drinks and have some communal meals together. And yeah. So it's both, for sure.
Okay, excellent. No, I appreciate that, through your worship. I just wanted to kind of get a sense of, you know, having been a booker for a community center, right? You potentially had people booking from, like you mentioned, coming in from out of town, right to the person that lives across the street from it. So I just wanted to kind of get a sense of that. So I do appreciate you coming out this evening.
I go back to Councillor Fawcett's. He raised a point that people are looking for this commercial space, and I've been in discussion with Westman Immigrant Services. They're interested in our space, and when I first started talking to Edinburgh, it was you know, they wanted to have a coffee shop and run some programming through the park, and I said, well, that's fine. We can definitely do that, but we have people that come in, like we have yoga that comes in 4 times a week. We have dance classes that go on 3 or 4 times a week, and I said, you know, we'd have to respect those, you know, commitments. And he said, well, yeah, no, we'll do that. But the second time I met with them, they wanted to take over the whole building. They want to take over bookings of the building and sort of usurp the board. So we're going to have to say no to that. But if they want to come down and rent the space as tenants, that we're all for that, for sure. That answer your question, Jeff? Sorry, or Councillor? Yeah.
Okay, and I didn't have other hands up, so, sorry, Councillor Barry, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I've actually got a couple of questions here, both for administration here at the city and for our presenters as well. First of all, Colleen, you said you put out a lot of applications for funding and that to different places and that. Have you actually received any ones that you've been granted funding for, and if so, how much?
We did one thing that I started, we were working with the website, and so we applied. There was a $500 grant, so we got the $500 grant for the website. Right now, we're in the process of applying for a $5,000 foundation grant. We thought we could go put it towards anything that comes in. There was a Honda. I have it all in my file. They've replied back to me that the grants are open for so long, and so they're working on them in regards to that. There was an accessibility grant. It's a Manitoba accessibility grant. It just closed, and it was for $50,000. So I called, we talked to them. but it doesn't support building ramps because our ramp is falling down. Like, there's some things that do need some care. So I reapplied for that grant, more so to bring awareness of accessibility to the community. I think that's incredible. I studied accessibility for 4 years, and accessibility, everybody should be able to come to the community. I don't know if anybody has friends or family that have accessibility or barrier issues, but that's something that I think as our community, if we could open the doors to make it extremely barrier-free and accessible. So this one grant from the Manitoba Accessibility Act, there is a Honda Foundation. I contacted Honda. They do $2 million a year, up to $300,000 per location. I said, pick us, we'll put together, we've got incredible packages. So there's that. The only two that are kind of solid are the foundation grant that's worked in process right now and the website grant, because we just got started. But yeah, we'll keep going if you guys let us, I guess, right? Like if we can develop it and make it a stronger environment for the community.
No, that's good. I got a couple more questions here, so I'll just try to keep this going here now. Through your worship to the presenters, and I don't know if you can answer this, or maybe other people that serve on Central Council can. I know at one time Central Council had some money that was set aside for park. Is that money still there? Is it still available, or is it gone?
My understanding, it's still available, yes.
Your understanding it's still available? Okay.
Yeah, that's what we thought too, but why not keep trying, right? If there's other communities. One thing that was really cool about the Honda grant is we had to have a minimum of 20 volunteers, and I was like, we could pull together 20 volunteers. So yeah, definitely something to support the community.
Okay, thanks. And another worship, I'm going to ask this question because this comes out of a conversation I had with one of your board members. I was on the phone for about 20 minutes with him one day discussing issues. One of the things revolving around park in the last couple of years is there's been a lot of misinformation and miscommunication, both from the city's part and from Parks board part when there wasn't a board. I mean, you guys have said it yourself. You've been there 3 months.
I started. That's why I'm there.
I've been there way longer than that. I've been there 2 years. So.
Okay, because we really haven't seen a whole lot of people come here in the 2 years since this was leading up to this.
Well, again,
but again, yeah, like
it's not our job to come to council. It's council's and the rec department's job to work with us. Like why would we come to council and we had nothing to ask of council? All we were saying to the rec department is let's get this project moving ahead, and nothing.
Yeah. Okay, and there's my point about the miscommunication, misinformation. So my question, Your Worship, somebody can answer this, because as they mentioned, they saw this resolution come out today. We just saw it Thursday. Who made this resolution to amend the mass motion that was made? Like, whose resolution or motion is this? Unless it's Chris's, I don't know whose it is.
Well, it's administration.
So this is administration proposing this?
They're recommending that, yeah. That's what I
So it's not from the area council or anybody else? So again, this isn't council recommending this. This is administration recommending
But
this.
administration put that forward with no input from us. Absolutely zero.
Fair game. Like I said, there's the no communication and the miscommunication. We talked about that. So, just a point from my own point of view. I mean, we've heard presentations, we've seen stuff that says we can do it for this and fix it. And we're getting other reports back saying, no, we can't do that. We need to do this. It's going to cost that much more. So as a council, and myself anyway, we're trying to make a decision based on factual information of what we need to make a decision on. And we're still dealing with two different stories. We're still dealing with two different things. We asked for an RFP last July for repair. I still haven't seen an RFP solid for repair for that building. But yet we have a proposal here to talk about a new building. I'm going to be honest with you here. That scares the heck out of me. That dollar figure right now, if I had to answer that, I'm like, no, forget it. We're not in.
That's not what we want.
But it's not my decision is to say, no, we don't need to do something. What I don't have is I don't have the information about the repair. I know SNEIS made a presentation. I want that in writing, in an RFP, with them sticking to it, and your engineers, that you say you were saying it was okay, saying this building will be fine.
And the city engineers that has hired twice now, that said the building is not okay. We have no idea about that. We have
Okay, so
never-
who do we listen to? We've got professional
never received that
engineers and,
information, and if had we
Yeah.
received that information, we could have gone back to rec board and said, recreation and said,
Yeah.
well, okay, let's work on this. And why, we don't understand why you're proposing that this building needs to be torn down.
because we've got our city staff that are professionals, designated, and we take their word for things. And if they say, no, this building isn't safe and needs to be torn down, we're gonna give that consideration. And I've had a pretty good walk through that building, and yeah, it's a little scary.
It's in rough
that,
shape,
so-
I'll give you that, but it's also been neglected.
Anyway, I'll kind of leave it at that. I've made my comments, I've asked my questions. I don't think, honestly, Your Worship, I'm any further ahead today than I was 8 months ago, because we still haven't got the piece of information we asked for last July, and that was the RFP for the repairs. We've had a presentation on it, and that's all we've had. Where is it?
We did have a special meeting recently. I'm not sure if were you in that meeting? March
I think I
22nd.
was, yeah. I think I was. March 22nd?
Yeah.
I may not have been right around the time.
Yeah,
I
so I'm
wasn't
thinking you
available
might have
yet.
missed a step.
No, I've been trying to think, but I
Yeah,
may not have been.
anyways,
But
you
anyway.
can dial back. I think I had Councillor Chaboyer again.
Thank you, Worship, through the presenters. One of the things that we looked at when we're looking at a new build versus renovation, and you mentioned about the Sneaks talking about a commercial kitchen. One of the things for a public building is all the standards are appropriate for public use, be it washrooms, everything.
accessibility
And the commercial kitchen conversation come up, and commercial kitchens, from all of our understandings, is they're quite costly venture. Do you require a commercial kitchen in that space?
Yes, we do.
Do you think you need
Yeah.
a big commercial?
Public health will not let us serve out of there unless there's a commercial kitchen. Not use, you can, we
But we could do a smaller one, right?
No, if you're serving the public, you cannot do it unless there's a commercial kitchen. That's my understanding of it. So then if, like when we had the Art for Ukraine sale there, Witch Park Community Center donated the center to that good cause. They were going to have Melba's bring in, and for her to serve that out of the kitchen, it had to be prepared at her kitchen, her commercial kitchen downtown, and brought over. She couldn't be prepared there legally. So that's just part of making a community center more accessible, more usable by everybody, is if you had a commercial kitchen.
But if it is catered food brought in,
That's a totally different thing.
that's a different thing. You can still have the liquor permits and bring catered food in.
I think one of the key things with the commercial kitchen too is the hood range, like the range and the ventilation system, which creates a lot of cost
Yeah.
in building that. So even if you did it in stages and you planned, this year, you put in the stove and next, but if you'd put in the ventilation for sure, like.
Well, I was just more interested in the type of clients or, people in the community that are accessing the center, if they really needed that commercial kitchen. Because my understanding is it would be a gathering space and you could offer more basic services for serving through catering, and you wouldn't need the costly commercial kitchen.
That is an option too, or you would not be
Okay,
able to.
but the thing
not
is,
be
it
able to
hasn't
do
been
so.
discussed extensively on what would work the best for that
Well, we've
space.
discussed it as a board, obviously, and we think that the commercial kitchen would be a great asset to have in there. Just makes the building more usable to more people and to, but again, if it comes to a cost-cutting budget thing, we can look at it and, work it out.
Okay, I didn't see any other hands up. I'm just going to tail off just a few comments or questions myself. As you can see, this has been a struggle for council. As you can tell, we had a motion that dates all the way back to last July, where council made a motion to put out an RFP to repair or replace. So there's nothing about like not having any. So you can see that was council's impetus to want to continue to have a park community center. And the fear was you know, it's a very old building, and, you know, the engineering reports that we were getting at the time, you know, was precarious to repair it, rebuild it, and whatnot. So council's suggestion at the time was that we would ask for RFPs for either, so that we could compare the possibility of if it could be repaired or what it would cost to replace brand new building. So under procurement regulations, so oftentimes as council, we sometimes have inspirations that are more difficult to achieve by our administration than we would like. Under our procurement rules, it was going to be difficult to ask for both a kind of an either-or type of thing. And so that's partly what's kind of dragged out the time frame. Administration would try to, you know, figure out a path forward on this. So we've, you know, ramped up the work on it. Engineers were put back into it. Our own development services department that is more accustomed to building stuff. You know, our engineering department, that's kind of what they do, is, you know, more so than the recreation department does. So the city manager handed it over to that area that are accustomed to building stuff. They had other engineers look at it, and was, you know, really the last kind of special meeting we had of council was, and that's what's kind of coming out in this report, revealing that it could be very difficult, very costly, and, you know, probably maybe not wise money spent on trying to make this old building back to you know, a proper, sound, accessible, modern building that's going to last for many years. I think, you know, money's going to be invested. I think all of us would want it to last for a long time. And obviously, the community does, especially the park community, wants to get this over with and get back to normal and back to your full capacity and bring it to life like you're describing. So that was the you know, I think maybe some members of council and what's come back from administration, we may differ a little bit on what that cost will be. Like, we've had some informal estimates from other contractors that would, you know, could replace that building with a brand new one for a lot less than what's contained in the report. So having said all that, and I'm sorry there's a bit of a backdrop for my question, would it, I just would like to ask, would the Park Community Center Board, and I gather you've, you know, had extensive discussions on this, no doubt, would the board just say, we want to have a strong functioning facility there, which therefore could be a new one, or are they saying, no, we want to preserve this, you know, some might call it a historic building. It's sort of historic in the sense it's been around a long time, you know, from those that study architecture and so on and so forth wouldn't necessarily say it's like a heritage building and so on and so forth. So I think maybe I heard Colleen earlier in your presentation say that there might be a difference of opinion on that. So it's, it's unfortunate that there's been a disconnect between our administration, albeit I know, Colleen, you met just very recently with our city manager end of last week to try and, you know, get this back on track. But leading up to that, you know, there hasn't been obviously enough discussion between probably recreation and the board to kind of work on this together. So that's unfortunate, but we can't turn back the clock. So would you feel that the board, I'm kind of getting signals that the board wants that building repaired as opposed to a new one?
What we would like was the city do what administration do, what council asked them to do in July. Send out proposals asking for exactly what we gave you with Sneath. Sneath gave you the whole platter, how much is it going to cost to repair that building. We wanted your administration to put out the same thing, so now we know what we're talking about.
Well, just on the repair of that building.
To repair that building. And once, if they come back and everyone says, okay, the building's no good. Your people come back and the marketplace says we can't repair that building for this much money. Then we would consider a new build. but we want the process.
Want to take that step first? Yeah, okay. I get you. Okay, no, I'm glad I asked the question. I think that better clarifies the point of view of the board. So, okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and I don't think there were any other questions. I miss anybody? We'll be dealing with this later on in the agenda, but I think there's still, we've been a long time at this, and I'm not sure we're precisely at the finish line yet, but we are, I think council is committed to getting us there, so bear with us.
We appreciate that. We appreciate all your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of you and to all of your delegation. I see you've attracted some of the Brandon's prominent drummers. That should help Councillor Cullen there. So,
Read debate motions and presentations.
okay, motion to receive would be in order, please. Councillor Chaboyer.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Worship. I move that the presentation by Colleen Sigurdsson with respect to the Park Community Centre be received.
Seconded by Councillor Cullen. Any discussion? Call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Under committee reports, Your Worship, I believe we have a verbal report from the Keystone Centre.
Councillor Lupke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do want to advise I was to give this report on our last council meeting, April 4th, but was not able to attend that night. So we did meet in March for our regular board meeting. As you and the rest of council are likely aware, along with the public, our vaccine super site and COVID testing site closed and cleared out as of the end of March. We do continue to post, interview, and hire for multiple operations position as we continue to staff up for the full reopening of the facility, which I think we're getting close to at this point in April. Financials at the fiscal year's halfway point, which was the end of January, are solid despite the cancellation of most events in January due to COVID restrictions. We did have about $300,000 operating surplus at the end of January, which is good news. Of course, we do have some of our tougher times of the fiscal year still to come in the late spring and summer. We did see an increase in the Tourism and Hospitality Recovery Program grant that helped offset some of our lost revenue in December and January. We did receive notice from the province of Manitoba for the new provincial appointees to our board of directors, those being Spencer Day and Katie Kirkowich. I did want to highlight some of the events as we are reopening the facility to full capacity. Of course, we do have Wheat Kings playoff games coming up next week. ZZ Top to appear May 3rd, Dallas Smith and Friends May 24th. Jurassic Quest was just announced today, June 17th to 19th, and the Professional Bull Riders on June 18th. I do know that Council did recognize the return of the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair at the end of March after a 3-year hiatus, which is the way I refer to it because it did grace the Keystone Centre for the first time since 2019. I was able to attend 2 evenings during the week and gained a new appreciation for the Royal Manitoba Winter Fairs. And I know there was some congratulations to the Provincial Exhibition of Manitoba board staff and volunteers for the work, but I also wanted to recognize the Keystone Centre management and staff for the support that they provided before, during, and after the event to make it as successful as possible.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lupke, and some great highlights there. And any questions on the Keystone report? Councillor Chaboyer.
Thank you, Worship, through to Councillor Lupke. How are you doing on your capital repairs and your capital plan? Or is the building moving forward too and the repairs getting done in a timely fashion?
Through your worship to Councillor Chaboyer, I would suggest that our capital repairs are on hold. We are awaiting our capital grant both from the city and the province for our current fiscal year, which I believe from the city standpoint should be coming any day now, I would think, with our financial plan having been passed. And then we will get moving on what some of our priorities are for the rest of this spring and summer.
Thank you. If you could provide us with some updates on what's going to be happening if you do receive some funding.
And any other questions, Councillor Lupke? Okay, thank you very much for that report. That was the only report we were readily made aware of, but sometimes there are other committees that may have met, and we'd be glad to take those now. Not seeing any. A motion to receive the Keystone report would be in order, please. Moved by Councillor Lupke, seconded by Councillor Parker. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
The order of inquiries, Your Worship.
Okay, for change, we didn't have any come in advance, but there was a long weekend, so there might be a few audibles, I call them, and I'm correct to that. So I have Councillor Barry, then Councillor Cameron. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I apologize for not getting this in. I was supposedly supposed to be out of town, but got stuck someplace that had 3 feet of snow, so I couldn't get it in. But my inquiry is actually, during this past budget, we added into the budget $100,000 to have the Willowdale ditch drenched. And I want to know from administration if the tender has gone out or when it's going out, and when that project can be expected to be started on the residents in the area. Just wondering when we might be getting going on that again. They're looking at the fact that it'd be nice to get it done before the rains come, as opposed to doing it in September, October, after the rains have already been here. So.
Okay. Look to the city manager. I don't imagine he would have that off the top of his head, so we'll take that.
Absolutely, we'll get back to you.
You bet.
Get that back to you. Thank you. And then Councillor Councillor Cameron, then Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the city manager, and again, this is probably a take under advisement moment. I did have the opportunity to talk with a resident that was involved with a motor vehicle accident over the weekend at 27th and Lorne. Did meet with the resident down there to chat with them a little bit about it, and subsequent it became a quasi-ward meeting because standing out on the corner there did attract some attention. So talked with a number of residents that are in the area of 27th and Lorne. It is a yield sign right now currently on 27th Street and then a through on Lorne Avenue, and the residents were inquiring about the possibilities of potentially that becoming a stop sign. So wondering if traffic analysts could take a look at it and see if that would be a possibility.
Very good. So that will we take under advisement as well. Good. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. And Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Your Worship. This, I got a request to pass some information along from a resident in Councillor Brown's ward. And I think, I apologize if I missed some of it, at our joint meeting at the Brandon School Division, I had to pop in and out and was a little late. But I think there was discussion around traffic issues at Maryland Park School, and those are ongoing, I'm assuming. So I will forward the letter I received from a parent of a child in that neighborhood to Mr. Bowles, and he can distribute it to whoever needs it. But they just, again, expressed concern, not knowing that we had this discussion ongoing already. So,
no, that's good. Well, thanks for that. You know, certainly we've had other inquiries to that extent. So it did form an item on an agenda for the public's sake. City Council and the Brandon School Board typically does meet together twice a year. Actually, those were curtailed for a while during COVID. We just had one recently. This topic was on there, and I do believe the matter was put in the hands of our administration to, you know, kind of work with the school board's administration. They do have a drop-off loop, but there is significant amounts of traffic, and so I think our traffic administration will be, you know, discussing this with the school board administration to see what improvements can be made. So you're providing that letter will certainly help that situation, Councillor Parker. Okay, and any other inquiries we might have missed? Councillor Chaboyer.
Thank you, Worship. I continue to get calls about the Garwood Drive dip, and my understanding is that administration are going to, or engineering are going to review that area again. So I just want to ensure that it's put on the list to have engineering take a look at it again, because it's a perpetual problem that I've experienced my entire time on council. And it's an extreme concern to everyone in the Green Acres ward about that dip that keeps getting flooded every spring or every time we have a major water event. And I just hope that there's a commitment from council or from engineering to review this area again and see if there's a solution.
That was Garwood Drive, right?
Garwood Drive, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Known as the Garwood Dip.
Garwood Dip.
Yes.
Okay. That took over from the Durham. Any other inquiries this evening? Okay, I think that's got it covered. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
The order of announcements, Your Worship.
Announcements tonight. Well, the announcements are often audibles, so instead we have none of those, but lots of audible inquiries, so we'll flop that around. Okay, not seeing any, we can move on to the next item, please.
Under the order of general business, Your Worship, we have the affordable housing incentive request from Habitat for Humanity for a project on Franklin Street.
Very good. I think we do have administration that are going to make a presentation this evening. Welcome to Shannon Saltarelli, who's taking over the housing portfolio, wellness and housing. So welcome to this evening.
Great. Thank you, Your Worship, and hello, councillors. So I'm just going to offer a brief overview of the request and the recommendation. So in March of 2021, the City of Brandon entered into a funding agreement with Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corporation, or the MHRC, which saw the City of Brandon receive just over $4 million in one-time capital funding to facilitate the development of affordable housing in Brandon. Approximately $890,000 remains unallocated at this time. After obtaining confirmation from the MHRC of their support, staff is recommending that Habitat for Humanity's proposal to construct 8 energy-efficient homes on their Franklin Street land holdings to be approved. The proposal includes a financial request of $65,000 per home for a total of $520,000 in funding. If the proposal is approved, the funds will be paid out of the municipal grant funding provided by the MHRC. The proposed homes will be built in 2 phases. The first one being 4 units will begin construction in spring of 2022 and be completed by March of 2023. And then 4 units will begin construction in fall of 2022 or the winter of 2023 and be completed no later than March of 2024. The Habitat model enables qualified low-income families to own a home without a down payment and without paying interest on their house mortgage for 15 years. Monthly mortgage payments, which include property taxes, will not exceed 27% of their total family income during the 15-year mortgage. All mortgage payments, excluding property taxes, received over the life of the Habitat mortgage, including the final payout of the mortgage after 15 years, get placed back into the Habitat Build program to fund new affordable housing units for purchase. This ensures that dollars invested in the Habitat program stay in affordable housing in perpetuity. The project proposal aligns with the city's affordable housing goal relating to the facilitation of affordable home ownership opportunities in Brandon and partnering with not-for-profit organizations involved in the development of affordable housing. Should Council approve Habitat for Humanity's funding request, the city's investment and guaranteeing long-term affordability will be protected by way of a funding agreement with the approved grant paid out upon the completion of agreed-upon milestones. And happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Saltarelli. We'll open up the floor for any questions that any member of council may have. Councillor Cullen.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Saroghi. When I do my math here, so we got 8 houses, so basically we're looking at about $65,000 a door. That's correct. We also, with Habitat, provide them with land, do we not?
So through your worship to Councillor, they currently have land holdings on Franklin Street.
Yep. Now, that was funded by us as well, was it not?
Yes.
Yes.
Through your worship, yes.
So again, what would you, maybe you may not have this number with you, but if you could get it back to me and just to help me, think my way through this kind of thing. What we're looking for, what is our land value that we also would be contributing as well above and beyond the 65,000 in this piece. Now this is this money is Manitoba housing money that's been provided to us to administer, correct?
That is correct.
Right, so we're basically then sort of fitting the two together to make sure that, okay, we've got the land, also we're kind of end up in a position where we're being the custodian of some provincial money as well in order to make it work. I'm just sort of struggling there as to how the whole package kind of gets together, maybe.
Sure.
Maybe if I could just.
Yep.
So we're in the transition phase, Your Worship, so I'll just answer part of this question because it goes back historically. So as to the value of the land holdings that we contributed to Habitat in the past, we'd have to get back to you on that figure because we gave a large acre of totally undeveloped land to Habitat. And over the years, through various renditions of their organization, they've developed close to 45, 50 homes on that undeveloped land. So to just pick out the value of that site today, it would be what we would call very minimal, because at the time it was given, it was undeveloped. Obviously now it would have a different value, but we did not take the step of doing an appraisal on that. What I will say, though, is when we look at some of our other affordable housing projects that we've done in the city, whether it be our seniors 2 projects on McDermott and on 2105 Brandon Avenue, the municipality donated those lands. We did donate the same value of the grant, and then on top of that, our provincial colleagues also donated money. So the ask for this project is certainly in keeping with what we would call historical norms.
Okay, that's what I was kind of going for there. Yeah. Now, do we, just to follow up on that, did we provide the infrastructure in the ground for that non-developed land, or did they?
There's going to be a blend there, but for the most of it, Habitat has done all of the investments. In the very, very early stages of it, there was a portion of infrastructure that the city put in because it not only helped this site, but other neighborhood needs.
So again, just sort of going forward then, what I'm looking for is our input into it, because sometimes it just gets to the point where you're, well, you know, it's $65 a door here and there, and we're kind of, you know, doing this on behalf of Manitoba Housing, and we're, you know, it's grant money that it benefits us to spend that money. Obviously, it's like it has no value whatsoever if we don't spend it. So, but at the same time, I kind of like to sort of be able to know the entire scope of the project of what our commitment is to it.
So through you, Your Worship, what I will endeavor to do is the times that the land was donated was actually before my time, so I'll have to go back and look into the files for that. I will forward it on to council. What I will note, though, with this project is because it is a home ownership project, council may be familiar with our multifamily projects where we typically would rebate through a tax offsetting grant 50% of the municipal portion of the taxes back for a duration of 20 years. Because this is a home ownership model, we as the municipality are actually collecting and retaining all of the property taxes on every single one of the units that go into the ground. So if you look at the minimal value of the Habitat land that we contributed, we have now collected taxes on those 47 homes. We will collect them on these new 8 homes. And CMHC did a study in 2021, and it showed that for every Habitat partner family that builds a home, over the duration of their mortgage, which is the 15 years, they contribute $200,000 to the economy through municipal taxes, provincial taxes, and investments. Does that help?
Yeah. But please don't get me wrong that I'm you know, saying anything against Habitat for Humanity, because I'm a champion of that group. So I was just wanting to make sure that I understood the numbers, because sometimes it just gets that we get so many fingers in the pie that we're just sort of trying to figure out what it really is costing and where the value is. Okay, thanks.
And other questions, but just to help round it out, I do know that I was on council the previous time when we donated this big block of undeveloped land. out there. So it's probably about 20 years ago that we donated this raw land, which didn't have a great value because undeveloped, as Sandy pointed out. So it's not like today when sometimes we donate a service lot, like an infill lot, which has significantly more value. This is bare land in a big 1 acre chunk, and it's 20 years ago. So it's kind of built out quite nicely, as Sandy pointed out. I have Councillor Cameron now.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question was actually answered in the response.
Now to Councillor Chaboyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Every time we do support affordable housing in Brandon. We need more and more units. And I ask this question every time these proposals, or when we put forward these motions. In both this motion resolution and the second one, I always want to see surety that we make sure that it's going to families in need and low income. So through this motion, are you assured with the agreement, the funding agreement, when we hand over funds for this, that they have assured you that it's going to go to a low-income family? And it's the same with the second property that we're going to look at here for rental units. The agreement is written in place that it is going to go to people in need in this community.
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Chaboyer, the Habitat for Humanity program is based on a application process and an eligibility requirement based on income, also sweat equity, and again, they will never pay more than 27% of their income into the mortgage. As their income fluctuates, that percentage does, or sorry, the mortgage does as well.
When you first hand over the funds to them, though, you ensure that you get to take a look at not the individual application, but just the process that they go about to ensure that it goes to a low-income family.
I'll defer to Sandy for that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Shannon did a great job of summarizing the Habitat model. Yeah. But in addition to that, the city enters into an actually legally binding funding agreement.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And within that funding agreement, it will stipulate the maximum income levels that are permitted, and it will also stipulate the duration of the affordability that needs to be ensured. Therefore, not only are we protecting our investment, but we're ensuring that the individuals that are in the home are continue to meet our low income thresholds.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. And I don't recall seeing any other hands. I think that has it. Thank you very much, Shannon. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that an affordable housing incentive be approved for the Habitat for Humanity Manitoba to facilitate the development of 8 Habitat for Humanity homes on Franklin Street in Brandon, whereby the incentive shall be comprised of a capital grant in the amount of $520,000, with said funds to be transferred from the Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corporation grant held by the City of Brandon as per the March 24th, 2021 funding agreement. And further, that administration be authorized to execute the associated agreements required to protect the city's interests in accordance with any procedures, policies, bylaws, and acts.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Cullen. Mover wish to speak?
No, I think administration covered it pretty well.
Any discussion? I'll just add in, I know our entire council is quite interested and pleased when we could see affordable housing projects being advanced. Certainly Habitat for Humanity has been a long-standing, excellent model among other models, but this is certainly one of the best known in North America of successful projects, and certainly we've seen a great many families that have gotten themselves into home ownership. I know I've attended almost all of they call it key ceremonies, and I know because they're in his ward, Councillor Parker has attended them as well, and other councillors as well, and it's always a very kind of heartwarming day when you see this. So again, great to see that this is continuing. I will state in advance, I think maybe Shannon and Sandy know this, we're soon going to run out of land in that particular block up there. I'm proud of the fact that I was a part of the council that agreed to this project, and it's gone a long way and for a long time. But pretty soon it's going to be full, and we're going to have to get creative with Habitat for Humanity to find other locations that they'll be able to carry on their good work here in Branham. So it's a little bit off the topic, but certainly I support this motion and happy to see them being able to carry on for their builds over the next couple of years. So, any other discussion before we call the question? Call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Is a second affordable housing incentive request for the property at 667th Street and 725 Van Horn Avenue by a numbered company 5853452 Manitoba Limited.
Thank you. And again, I think administration are going to give us the highlights on this one.
Thank you, Your Worship. So again, a brief overview of the recommendation coming forward that was provided in the report. So again, on December 20th of 2021, Brandon City Council approved an affordable housing grant in the amount of $55,000 per unit for 18 units to be built at 667th Street and 725 Van Horn Avenue, utilizing funding provided by the Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corporation. Since submission of the original proposal through the public RFP process, lumber prices have escalated notably, supply chain constraints are not improving, and rising fuel costs have all contributed to material and subcontract prices that far exceed the typical contingency amounts factored into the original detailed project. These inflationary pressures are pushing the project from viable to questionable. As such, the proponent is requesting an additional $10,000 per unit in capital funding. The request for additional funding makes the total capital request $65,000 per unit, a figure that is in keeping with other capital grants approved by municipal and provincial government for the construction of new affordable rental units. The additional grant will enable the proponent to secure project financing and move forth with financing construction contracts, enabling them to begin construction in the spring of 2022 and have the units ready to be occupied in spring of 2023. Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corporation is supportive of the increased funding request. Again, with approximately $890,000 of the provincially provided funding not allocated, this request will have no impact on the City of Brandon's affordable housing reserve. The City of Brandon's procurement manager confirmed that approving additional funding after the awarding of the project is not breaking any procurement rules, and the total request will now be $1,170,000. Again, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Open the floor to questions. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, through your worship, to the presenter. Most likely supporting this, but just in reading that, that the contingency costs, rising fuel costs contributing to the materials, yada, 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 and comment around lumber prices escalating. Is that really happening right now? Because I thought the exact opposite was happening right now. I might be wrong, but I have not read anything that said lumber prices are escalating. Are they escalating right now?
Yeah, they slumped them down and
they
then
slumped them and going back
again.
I'm out. I just saw with the mortgage rates going up and housing going down.
They hope to have it come down again, but they're high.
Okay.
Any other, Councillor Cullen?
Yeah, I can jump in there and say that for a guy that's been playing in that market a little bit lately, it's you know, you think it's going down, but you know, especially there's certain areas and it's just it's fluctuating all over the place right now. I would expect that it would go down, but it hasn't in some cases. Yeah.
Through you, Your Worship, if I could maybe just comment. So we've been tracking the lumber costs for a variety of commercial and business projects as well. And so the volatility is huge right now. When we look at this project alone, since the original costing of it and now today, so that's roughly 4.5 months. The units went up by $11,000 a unit on lumber alone. And we've now had, in the last 2 weeks, out of the BC investor markets, reports that for the first time in history, that developers are actually citing the volatility in the lumber markets as their major constraint to development. So typically you would see things like land shortages, or you would see regulation and red tape. Now it is actually the volatility of lumber, because what people are seeking is some confidence in what their lumber costs will be, and that is not being provided now. So basically they will say, as of today, here is your quote. We will hold it for a very limited period of time, and then it will escalate. And so when you're trying to get a project financed, that is not something that the lending institutions are happy to see. They want to see figures locked in. So even locking them in today, there is a great deal of volatility and risk for the proponents, and that is in all residential and business projects.
Thank you. It's good information.
Thanks for asking that. Yep. And other questions? Councillor Cameron, sorry, I did have you.
No worries. Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Saltarelli. Welcome to the podium, first of all. So, just a quick question. Is the proponent of this project required to hold any sort of public consultation on the development, or with zoning not changing, is there, just because I've lived this myself, is there a requirement that they have any sort of public consultation or reach out to neighbors with regards to the changes to the property?
Your Worship, to Councillor, I'm going to defer to Sandy on that question. I want to make sure I answer it correctly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Through you, Your Worship. So at this point in time, the proposal doesn't indicate the need for any rezoning or variances. Okay. So with that in mind, then there would be no need for public consultation. It currently conforms with the existing zoning, and all the requirements are met. Should something change and the developer has a need to adjust parking, then it would trigger a variance, and through the variance, it would automatically trigger public consultation. I can say, though, that because this site is adjacent to rail tracks, there has been a significant amount of community dialogue over the years to get it to this point. So the neighborhood is very familiar with the project, and there has been no reservations noted as of yet.
Oh, I appreciate that, and thank you for that. Yeah, I just thought in the eventuality or potentiality when we're looking at fluctuating costs, that'll always give the developer cause for pause to look at how they craft the property differently. So if that property were to change as far as the makeup, that it would trigger feedback from residents.
So through your worship, so no, public consultation is only triggered when we need to action one of the regulatory mechanisms. So if it didn't conform on a zoning lens, that would trigger it. If there was insufficient parking, that would trigger a variance. If they were unable to meet their side yards or rear yards or front yards variance. So there has to be a regulatory deficiency in order to trigger it. So at this point, we don't envision that happening. The proponent has his designs finalized. I mean, we're at what we'll call, we can see the finish line, and the mortgage needs to be tied up within the next 3 weeks in order to ensure that the point that he had been offered was intact. So there will be no delay in moving forward should council approve this recommendation this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Lupke.
Yeah, thank you. Just to confirm again, I think I asked the same question when we approved it in December, but this build also includes protective berm for the build for the rail line, just based on its proximity to the rail line, correct, Sandy?
So through your worship, yes, it does, and that's why some of the fuel costs and the inflation that's associated with that are actually playing out in this project, because there is a significant berm work that's being done, and that's been all approved by our planning team.
Thank you.
Other questions? I think that's got it covered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, thanks.
And ready for motion, Councillor Lupke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that in additional affordable housing incentive be approved for 585-3452 Manitoba Limited to facilitate the development of 18 affordable housing units at 660 7th Street and 725 Van Horn Avenue, whereby the incentive shall be comprised of a capital grant in the amount of $180,000, with said funds to be transferred from the Manitoba Housing and Rural Corporation grant held by the City of Brandon as per the March 24, 2021 funding agreement, and further that administration be authorized to execute the associated agreements required to protect the city's interests in accordance with any procedures, policies, bylaws, and acts.
Seconder, please. Councillor Frangi. Mover wish to speak?
Just briefly, the one other thing that our administration did not mention was that had the original proposal requested the $65,000 per unit in capital funding, which is what we're providing with this additional amount tonight, the evaluation committee would have still recommended approval of the project during our December 20th, 2021 council meeting. So we're not really going outside the realm of what would be normal or approved regularly.
Yes, thanks for adding that. I read that myself. So, any other discussion? Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, through your worship. I just want to thank Ms. Trudell for her work on affordable housing over the years, and she's sort of leaving us with, in a boom as we're bringing in like loads of affordable housing with the funding. And everybody knows, I believe housing is a continuum, and I'd hoped that the province would really focus their attention on our most marginalized. Having said that, this is definitely going to be a benefit for our community, and really glad to see the Habitat for Humanity ones coming to the table today as well. So kudos to Sandy and Shannon for that work, and everybody else in the administration that helped put it together.
Thanks very much, and highlighting the sort of passing of the torch here tonight, as Sandy has many years of experience in this. It does transfer that knowledge over to our new wellness and housing coordinator in Shannon. So good to see them team up tonight, and of course Sandy will still be not too far away as Shannon continues to take this on. So you're correct, Councillor Desjardins. It is great to see more attention and projects coming forward in the affordable housing realm. So it'll be one category of it. As you pointed out, there's other categories that still need a lot of attention. So, okay, I think we're ready for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Is consideration of an amendment to the fee schedule regarding on-street parking meters.
Very good. And not sure whether we're having a presentation, but go ahead, Councillor Lupke.
Thank you, Worship. I move that Fee Skid Reg 002 be amended by adding to page 9 of Schedule A under the parking meters on-street section the following text: not applicable to qualified applicants under the food truck program.
Seconder, please. Councillor Barry, mover wish to speak?
I'm not sure if administration was going to give a brief on this, but
okay, I think,
reality is, Patrick,
Pulak is ready for us.
Good evening, through your worship, to council. The driving force behind this amendment is we're making a change to our food truck program. Previously, we would set aside spots throughout the city for food trucks that an owner of a food truck could approach us and then have that spot put in their name so no other food truck could use it, and that would be set aside for their use for the season. We are making an amendment to that policy. We will continue to set aside spots for food trucks to be used during the summer season. It will be on a first-come, first-served basis, though. Some of these areas exist in the downtown area. What we're asking or are suggesting here or recommending is that we waive the meter fees in these areas that we've designated for the food trucks, just to bring it in line with the other areas that don't have metered parking. In closing, I would add that this would be a very minor impact to the revenues generated from metered parking.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Pulak? Councillor Cullen.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Mr. Pulak. We are collecting some sort of a fee anyway to do this, like as in a business licensing fee that to come in and be a vendor in the city. Like I know the nickels or the quarters of running around and plugging the meters and stuff is like, even if you're there for like we're talking like $6, $7 or whatever to keep plugging a meter, which is just inconvenient. But at the same time, we have businesses that are paying taxes downtown and paying taxes where they are, and they're here to stay and they're permanent. So we're still collecting a fee for them to be there at on the street through some sort of a licensing and vending license?
Through your worship to Councillor Cullen, certainly the food trucks operate as a business and must have a business license to operate in Brandon as such. That is run through, I'm not sure what department it runs through that,
Licensing.
but yes. Is it through the, okay, there you go. And as far as I know, that is the only fee that they're charged.
If I may, Your Worship, they are subject to a mobile vendor license, yes.
Okay, and that's like a per day thing for being in a spot?
No, it's for the season, per se. I don't know what the amount, it's substantial, like $380 or something. I have to double check what the actual amount is, but it's not just $50. It's a reasonably substantial license fee.
Okay.
And that serves them for the season.
Okay.
I can, if you...
Yeah, if you could forward that information to me when you get a chance, that would be great. Thanks.
Other questions of Mr. Pulak? Councillor Barry?
Thank you, Worship. Just a real quick, Mr. Pulak. You said there's designated areas for the food trucks that we have for the city. I'm going to assume we're not going to be letting them park in front of Comfort Kitchen type thing, and that there are different areas away from, like Councillor Cullen mentioned about the permanent businesses that are downtown, is that we have the food trucks away from the permanent restaurants and that they're not right there in their front doorstep, so to speak. So.
Through your worship to Councillor Barry, to be honest with you, I'm not sure exactly where those spots are, but I know that in consideration of designating those spots, they are kept away from existing businesses that, restaurants. But I do know that they do try to keep them close to, say, the skateboard park or the park across the way.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Desjardins?
Yeah, through your worship, and Patrick, you might not have the answer because I was looking at the maps where they're going to be, and there's some great locations like Stanley Park, Rideau Park, good spots for food trucks, and I could see why there'd be value in having some connected to Princess Park. I also, know that Derek at Comfort Kitchen put up with the food truck wars when they were downtown. He's been, that restaurant's been part of what's keeping the downtown thriving, and I would be hate to, causing grief for somebody who's a downtown champion, and so I see that some of the spots for these are located right near Princess Park, and there's actually 9 spots that we have as potential. So my question is, on any given day, are we going to ensure that we're limiting the number of food trucks that could park in proximity to Princess Park? And I don't know if you'd have that answer. But I guess what I'm saying is I think 9 would be crazy, right? And 2 or 3 around Princess Park, he might be able to wrap his head around.
Through your worship to Councillor Desjardins, what I will say is this is a program and not necessarily a program that's been approved by council, which allows us to have some flexibility in how we operate the program. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we see that there's an issue and there's a conflict between existing businesses and the food trucks, not the one who is operating the program, but I would suggest that there would be ability to amend the program so we're not having continued conflict.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I would just strongly encourage that we ensure that we're checking with restaurant owners in the downtown and making sure they're okay with that as much as we could.
I will ensure that message gets passed on.
Other questions? Not seeing any other. Thank you very much, Mr. Pulak. And any other discussion before we call a question on this motion? Seeing any, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And next item, please.
Is another amendment to the fee schedule regarding police services.
Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to move that the fee schedule reg 002 be amended effective April 20th, 2022 by making the following changes to detainee lodging for police agencies with a detainee agreement per detainee per 24-hour period or part thereof on page 27 of Schedule A to fee schedule reg 002. Increase the 2022 fee from $157 to $207.
Seconder, please. Councillor Cullen. And does mover wish to speak?
I think we have somebody that knows a lot more about this than me, so if we can ask them to come up and talk about it, please.
Very good. Chief Balkin would like to come and hit the highlights on this and answer questions. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Your Worship. We brought this forward to the police board meeting. The fact is, when we made the amendments to our fee schedule, we looked at this for the cost of lodging per prisoner per day over the course of the year. Not calculated into that as part of the contract was going to take on was the indemnification costs or the legal costs should a complaint be made against our police service. A lot of the agencies that we spoke to that are going to use this as some lodging don't have the financial wherewithal to have the complete upfront cost to cover that. Generally, if we get a complaint that goes to a oversight body, it varies between $1,400 and $1,600. So adding a $50 fee for each detainee would help offset this cost should it come to fruition if somebody ever makes a complaint against members. To date, we've been running this for approximately 2 years or since COVID started, and we haven't had any complaints, but this is to look at having a buffer built in just in case it does happen.
Questions of the chief on this? Fairly straightforward. That is covered. Thank you, Chief. Back to the motion. Any further discussion? We're ready for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Consideration of an amendment to resolution number 1127, which was passed at the July 12th, 21 meeting of City Council regarding Park Community Center.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to put forward a motion to table this motion until no later than the May 16th meeting. I think there's a lot of frustration in the room, a lot of information that doesn't appear to be as clear as what I think a lot of us would like it to be. And I will speak for myself only. I was a little bit caught off guard with how this was presented. And I think others were as well. So I don't think we're serving anybody well by dealing with this particular motion tonight. I think we're ill-equipped to deal with it appropriately.
Would you mind, I seldom do this, would you mind to table it to May 16th with the suggestion that administration meet with the park board in the meantime?
I think amongst others, yeah. I don't know whether we need a group of councillors, all councillors, how we want to deal with that.
Administration at minimum.
Yeah, absolutely. So the committee, the subcommittee of council maybe?
We'll get it started there with now that is a bit of a goofy motion, Madam Clerk. So
It's okay.
I'm going to ask you to, before I ask for a seconder, I'm going to ask you to recite what you think we've said.
That the matter of the proposed amendment to resolution number 1127 with respect to the request for proposals for Park Community Center be laid on the table. And basically what that means is I mean, as much as you put a date on it, you can bring it back
Soon.
off the table anytime.
Okay.
So you're not bound to the May 16th, but.
Would somebody like to second that? Councillor Lupke? I don't believe a tabling motion is generally debatable.
Correct.
So I think everybody understands why. So we'll vote on it, and if it fails, then we'll have another discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously. And for the sake of the people in the audience, especially from the Park Community Center Board that spent some time with us tonight, hope everybody understands what's happening here. So we're wanting to just not proceed with the motion that was presented on tonight's agenda until we've had time to probably get some discussion with the Park Community Center Board and gather a little bit more information here, and hopefully we get this to the right place pretty soon. So thank you very much for coming out tonight and sharing your perspectives, which I think did help to inform council in terms of what the community custodians of the facility have in mind, and I think it'll help us to take it to the next step. So thank you all. Okay, we're ready for the next item, please.
An update on the council strategic plan, Your Worship. You?
Now, how did we want to handle this? Mr. Bowles, were you going to just accepting this as an update, or do you want to highlight some?
Yeah, this is just an update for council, so if there's any questions, we'll attempt to answer them. Other than that, it's just for council's information.
Yeah, and as council knows and the public knows, we're administration are helping us to do a better job of providing these periodic updates as to the status of council's strategic plan, and a little bit of a measuring stick as to the progress on some of these items. So that's there to just keep this transparent for the public and the media, but we can answer questions if there were any. Councillor Chaboyer?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Mr. Bowles. One thing that we've discussed at many strat plans is having some kind of ward tracking system, so we know exactly if the issue has been resolved or if it's, still in the works. And it was going to be a transparent process with the citizens too, to see where their issues sit. I don't see that. I looked over the plan a couple of times. Is that still in the works for council or for the city?
It absolutely is in the works. It's not in your strategic plan that you came up with a few years ago, but it is being worked on at this point, yes.
Okay, yeah, because my understanding is it was a priority with council to have some kind of system there. So.
Yeah, and we've discussed, city manager has kind of embraced the, come up with a program to do a better job of that, and they're just, what do they call it? Beta testing, is that the terminology that's used to get the...
Pilot testing is completed and beta testing is getting ready. How about that?
Okay, so I don't know all the IT terminology, but so I think it's going to be really good for council and for the public once that is rolled out. So we look forward to that. Any other questions? Councillor Cameron?
Thank you, Your Worship. Not a question, but a comment, and this sort of harkens back to Councillor Lareggio's days here, but I was happy to see backlane strategy policy in the document, and as well that we're at 40% on it with an expected backlane strategy by the end of 2022, and I'm hopeful either myself or many other members of council are on council the day that strategy does come back to us, because it's been quite a long time coming, and I'm hoping to see that number move past 40% on that 2022 date. So,
I agree with you. Turns out I might not be here to see that roll out, but that's the way it works. City's been around for 140 years or whatnot, and going to continue before and after us. So, any other questions? Okay, not seeing any other, then a motion to receive this report would be helpful, please. Councillor Cameron, go ahead.
Thank you. I move that the update on Council Strategic Plan dated March 2022 be received.
Seconder, please. Councillor Chaboyer. Any discussion? Call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
Under the order of bylaws, Your Worship, bylaw number 7322, which is the tax increment financing for Princess Downtown priority sites.
Councillor Jarley.
Thank you, through your worship. I move that the Princess Downtown Priority Site Tax Increment Financing Bylaw number 7322 be given first reading.
Seconder, please. Councillor Frangi. And again, first reading just gets the process started. We don't discuss at this point, so we're going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Bylaw number 7325, which is the borrowing of funds for the construction of the chemical building at the water treatment facility, Series B.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that bylaw number 7325 to provide for the Series B borrowing of funds for the purpose of constructing a chemical building at the City of Brandon Water Treatment Plant be read a second time.
Seconder by Councillor Chaboyer. And mover wish to speak?
If there was a member of administration that would be able to speak to this, I would appreciate that, Your Worship.
Okay, who would be? Mr. Hammond is online, and here he's coming on.
Hear me? You hear me?
It's a little weak. Just maybe speak a little louder. Or...
Okay, that might be my voice. I'm battling the flu. My apologies. So this bylaw is the third reading of the bylaw to complete the borrowing process for the Series B borrowing for upgrades to the water treatment plant chemical building. In total, that's a $16 million borrowing. We did it in two parts. We did a Series A and we did a Series B borrowing. The Series A borrowing for $8 million has been approved by both the Municipal Board and the Public Utilities Board. The Series B borrowing is, this completes the process to approve it from the Municipal Board to obtain the borrowing, and the process to obtain approvals through the Public Utilities Board to recoup the borrowing as a special levy on water rates is in process, but we're expecting that to come shortly. So that project is nearing completion, and with that, it would be prudent to finalize the borrowing for this most important of projects to our water treatment facility. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Came through fairly clear there after all. Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Hammond on this? That's fairly straightforward. This has been before us for quite a while as this project played out, but glad to take questions. Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Mr. Hammond. And any further discussion before we call the question? Councillor Desjardins.
Yeah. Thank you, through your worship. Just for information for residents that they anticipate that a typical family of four consuming 46 cubic meters of water by us pursuing the rate rider to offset the borrowing. It'll add $4.10 to their quarterly invoice, $4.10, which would be an increase of 2.4%.
Thanks for highlighting that. That's good information. Any other discussion? Councillor Chaboyer.
Thank you. I just wanted to support this motion because safe drinking water is one of the most important functions that we do as a council, and to have a safe place to store these chemicals in our process is just as important.
For that. Any other discussion? Ready for the question then? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Third reading would be in order. Councillor Cameron?
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, thank you to Mr. Hammond for appearing this evening, albeit that he wasn't feeling well, so I appreciate that. I would move that the bylaw be read a third and final time.
Seconder, please. Councillor Chaboyer. Any discussion? Third reading, recorded vote is required. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously, including Councillor Fawcett. Next item, please.
Bylaw number 7327, which is the bylaw to impose property taxes for 2022.
Who would like to impose the taxes? Councillor Lubke, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that bylaw number 7327 to impose and levy property taxes for the fiscal year 2022 be read a second time.
Seconder, please. Councillor Parker. Mover wish to speak?
Not really, Your Worship. I think we spent a couple of days doing the budget and passed our financial plan at the last meeting here in April. I think we've probably highlighted what our property tax rate will be for 2022 sufficiently.
Yes, we have. Certainly important motion. Kind of culminates in this. Kind of anticlimactic. The big doings was in end of January, but this is doing all the housekeeping for this to pass the actual bylaw. So if there's not any further discussion, then we'll call for the question on second reading. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And third reading would be in order, if you'd like, Councillor Lubke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the bylaw be read a third and final time.
And seconded by Councillor Parker again. There'll be not any further discussion. So again, recorded vote is required on third reading. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously, including Councillor Fawcett. Next item, please.
Bylaw number 7329, which is an amendment to bylaw 6974 regarding campaign expense limits for municipal candidates.
Councillor Cameron, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that bylaw number 7329 to amend campaign expenses and contributions bylaw number 6974 to increase the limit to campaign expenses that may be incurred by candidates and to index any future increases for inflation be read a second time.
Seconder, please. Councillor Desjardins. Mover wish to speak?
Perhaps Ms. Wasiak might want to speak to this, Your Worship.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Council, in 2010, the province introduced a requirement for councils to pass a campaign expense and contribution bylaw, which sets out limits as to how much can be spent on a campaign in an effort to keep a more level playing field for potential candidates. And so that amount was, I believe, originally $16,000 for mayor and $4,000 for council. But as we all know, over time, inflation makes the cost of doing campaigns that much more expensive. So we are proposing, and keeping with the increase in the CPI from 2018 to 2022, which was a 6.13%. That's what we have rounded up the contribution limit to at this point, which is 18, sorry, I gotta get my own numbers here. Sorry, $18,000 for somebody. It's being increased to $19,100 for mayors, potential mayor candidates, and from $4,500 to $4,800 for councillors. We've also included a new clause in there that puts in an indexing clause, which so that we do not have to revisit this at all times. And basically, it's similar to what the province uses to index some of their contribution and campaign limits. And so it's based on, again, the cost inflation rate from 2022 to the next election, 2026. They will automatically be increased to that spending limit.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions of Ms. Wasiak on this? We did prepare this report. Councillor Lubke.
Curious if you were to use wood signs, if there's a lumber escalator on this.
You might have to get inventive with what you're using.
Right.
Thank you, Worship.
Recycling will be more important. Any other discussion? Okay, I think we're ready for the question on second reading then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Third reading would be in order. Councillor Cameron?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the bylaw be read a third and final time.
Seconded by Councillor Cullen. And I don't believe there's any further discussion. So again, third reading, a recorded vote is required. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously, including Councillor Fawcett. Next item, please.
Bylaw number 7330, which is for the bylaw to regulate the use of municipal resources in an election.
I'd like to present that one. Councillor Lupke, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that bylaw number 7330 to establish the rules and procedures for the use of municipal resources before a general election or by-election be read a second time.
Seconder, please. Councillor Frangi. Movers to speak, or would like Mr. Wozik to give us the lowdown on this, please?
Sure, might as well give Heather some airtime.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Council, the province passed some amendments to the Municipal Act recently, which requires municipalities to, again, make a bylaw about the use of municipal resources during municipal elections, specifically during the 42-day period, nomination period before the general election or the by-election, so that it correlates with the nomination period. The intent, again, is to try and level the playing field for all candidates and make sure that incumbents don't have what's deemed as an unfair advantage by virtue of their access to municipal resources and communication platforms. And so in drafting the bylaw, the consideration was given to the type of municipal resources that the bylaw covers, when the use of resources by a candidate may be appropriate, restrictions on that use, and exceptions to those restrictions if they're justified. And it also has an enforcement method to be used and the framework for those bylaw infractions, which in our case is a verbal warning, and then if there's a second incident, they can be fined. And they're also asked to remove any offending literature or images, statements, etc., that might not abide by the bylaw. The other thing that is included in this is the fact that incumbents cannot use their current title when they're promoting themselves as a potential candidate, and there's a bit of a codicil. They can say John Doe Councillor but they cannot refer to themselves as Councillor John Doe. So there's a few little tweaks that the province has requested that municipalities look at as, again, an effort to keep a more level playing field for potential candidates.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. Again, we're kind of tidying up in conjunction with the Municipal Act. Any questions? Not seeing any. I think then any further discussion before we call for second reading? Call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And third reading would be in order if you'd like, Councillor Lupke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the bylaw be read a third and final time.
Seconder, please. Councillor Chaboyer. There'll be any further discussion. Again, recorded vote required. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously, including Councillor Fawcett. Next item, please.
It's bylaw number 7332, which is proposed changes to the boundaries and names of the electoral wards in the city of Brandon.
Charlie?
Thank you, through your worship. I move that bylaw number 7332 to change the boundaries and names of the electoral wards of the city of Brandon be read a second time.
Seconder, please. Councillor Berry. And again, go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship, I'd like to make an amendment to that motion if I could as well, please.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll just allow Ms. Wozik to give us again an overview first, and then we'll dig into it. Go ahead, please.
So Council may or may not be aware that we have not changed the ward boundaries substantively since 2008. There was a small correction a few years, 2014, I believe, to the Meadows Waverly ward. But based on the new census information that came out for 2021, we looked at realigning some of the boundaries to try and equate the number of residents in each ward so that it was a little fairer distribution throughout the wards of the city. So we have used that census data, not only residents, but also number of dwellings, to come up with those changes, while also looking at giving consideration to topographical features, settlement patterns, and population trends that we know may be in the future with future development. So based on those criteria, we looked at a few. Not all wards were changed, but there was basically it is reflected in the boundaries of the south end of the city where the most development has occurred. And so there has been some slight adjustments to the Meadows, what was known as the Meadows ward, the Rosser ward, Richmond ward, pardon me, and Green Acres ward are the three main ones that were altered. We also looked at presenting some changes to the ward names because currently they're based on sort of the geographical area, and as that changes, it can be confusing for ward residents to actually understand what word they're in. So we've gone with some very generic names, which may or may not appeal to council, but that's open for debate. And so that is also part of the bylaw, is altering those ward names to more location-centered names, such as North Electoral Ward, the North Centre Ward, West, West Centre, South Centre, Southeast, Southwest, that type of thing.
Thank you very much for that explanation. There's quite a bit of work went into this to massage and try and get the numbers to even out, but a relatively good product. So any questions of Ms. Iwazic before we get into making changes? Councillor Chaboyer?
Thank you, Worship, through to Ms. Iwazic. Do we need the word electoral in all those names? Because it makes for a really long ward name. And I'm assuming most residents would know that they're in a ward. Do we have to have that word in there?
Through your worship to Councillor Chaboyer, that's kind of a technical thing. If council is more comfortable with Brandon South Ward 8 as opposed to Brandon South Electoral Ward, we can certainly amend those descriptions to change that official name of the ward.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Cameron?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question with regards to two wards in particular as far as the naming conventions. And it was more so to deal with potential overlap with provincial constituencies, in that we have two potential wards being named Brandon West and Brandon East. Is there any concern or is there the potentiality that the province are changing these ward names? Because my only fear with those is that there is an overlap, that it will further confuse residents as opposed to, maybe meet the goal that we hope in making it easier for residents to understand which ward they're represented by.
Through your worship to Councillor Cameron, a point well taken. It may lead to some confusion. Council may want to look at just going with straight numbers. That's a suggestion I'll throw out there right now. You might want to think about just going Ward 1, Ward 2, through to Ward 10. That might alleviate some of that confusion as well. It's a balancing act.
Right, absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions of Ms. Iwazic before we kind of tie into it here? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. And I think now back to Councillor Berry. I think you had an amendment?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Worship. I'd like to amend this motion that the ward boundaries outlined in Schedule B of bylaw number 7332 be amended by moving the current portion of Ward 7, if anybody has their maps handy, located south of Patricia Avenue, which extends to the southern limit of the city west of 18th Street South, to become part of Ward 8, and that Schedule A to the bylaw be amended to reflect the changes in Schedule B.
Thank you. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Lupke. who wishes to speak?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Worship. When the changes came out for ward boundaries, I'd had this discussion with the city clerk before. There's a little piece of property that lies south of Patricia Avenue that has been part of Ward 7 or Linden Lanes ward the last little while. That piece of land actually falls directly below the Richmond ward and not below the Linden Lanes ward. And just to try to keep things a little bit symmetrical and in, you know, a little bit more square, so to speak, or rectangular, it just makes more sense for that little piece of land, because I don't even think there's, maybe one house on there, that it becomes part of the Richmond ward as opposed to the Linden Lanes ward, because all the development is actually over in the Linden Lanes ward. And so that's where the growth is going to be. Having that little piece that kind of shoots off of Linden Lanes out on past Patricia, again, just optics-wise, doesn't make a lot of sense when it's right below Richmond ward.
Thanks. I'll maybe add to that before there's other discussion. I circled the same thing on the map myself, and also I think to a point I know you had made in terms of, you know, we have some wards that are all built out, so there's not going to be a lot of growth in it, and other wards where lots of growth is occurring. So trying to keep the you know, the population equitable in all the wards, obviously not possible when you've got, so your ward, Ward 7 as it's is known, will continue to grow, and by, at least in my view, carving off this, not only does it make it more symmetrical, but as that one starts, because isn't that the annex piece as well?
Yes.
Which will eventually begin to be populated, right. and at least it'll take one growth node out of Ward 7, add it to Ward 8, and it will help to at least, you know, minimize the disparity as time moves on. So I personally support this amendment, but we'll open the floor to discussion on the amendment. Councillor Parker?
I'm just not sure. I don't have a question per se to that, but I'm just wondering about the naming, where we throw that into the mix here. Do we do a second
we'll deal
amendment?
with this amendment first, just of the
Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
So right now we're just going to discuss the amendment. But if there's no further discussion on the amendment, then I think we're ready for the question. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, so now we can carry on with discussion about others. So
I don't like just what Councillor Cameron alluded to. I didn't like that particular piece, and I wasn't reading that. I'm a little bit, people would be just as confused as ever as whether they're in Brandon West, South Center, or whatever. So I'm all for the numbers. Just keep it simple. And
Councillor DeGarley?
Yeah, thank you, through your worship. I'd be in favor of that too. When I initially coming here today, I was actually going to recommend, it's interesting that Councillor Cameron brought that up, because I was going to recommend that we consider West End and East End, which would simplify that if we were going to go with numbers and the directions. Certainly in favor of removing the names. I'd be fine with us going with numbers, but I think West End and East End also clears that up a bit too. That's my recommendation.
You partly lost me though, that but sure I understood the part about adding.
So Brandon East, instead of Brandon East, would be Brandon East End, and Brandon West would be Brandon West End. So we wouldn't have West or East, and there wouldn't be that confusion with the provincial election.
Oh, I get you. Okay. Thank you. So there sounds like there's some appetite for going with just numbers. And that could be an amendment easily made. There was I think it's in this report, but there'd been a significant study, I guess, done, well, it was just when I was leaving council, so it had been done in about 2005, 2006, that recommended a bit of a hybrid, dividing the city into 4 large wards with 2 councillors elected per ward. So we don't have time to do a proper job of consulting the community on that and so on. So I think the recommendation is that the next council would, you know, we're doing some housekeeping here by you know, kind of evening out the wards, maybe touching up the naming, and then it'd be a bigger discussion done probably next council about the electoral system in general, at which time it could take a whole different complexion, and therefore naming could be considered. I don't think we've really got enough time to properly name it. So I appreciate the city clerk's department has done a good job of pulling this all together for us here, and it's timely. We have to do this by the end of April, any changes to be made, and probably simplifying it just to the numbers at this point in time, because as hard as they tried to put in some geographic monikers, then it got to be, south center, southwest center, north by northwest, like kind of going on and on. There'll be a Stan Rogers song here before too long. So at any rate, so I think maybe if council has an appetite to go with just numbers, it might be a reasonable interim measure until the bigger review is done. Councillor Parker.
I would put forward that amendment that we go strictly with ward numbers.
And that is seconded by Councillor Fawcett, is that right? I believe it is. Mover of the amendment wish to speak?
No, I think we've covered it.
Councillor Desjardins?
Thank you. Through your worship, I was just wondering if we could fix this once and for all and have like Brandon Center being Ward 1 and Jeff's ward being Ward 2 instead?
Oh, as far as the numbering?
I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
You're getting one of these from Councillor on the online thing. We could make it even more. I'm all for. We could have numbers like 1, 2, 3, D, 5, 6, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. Sorry. And I had Councillor Chaboyer. Sorry, Councillor Chaboyer, had you had your hand up?
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted clarity that we are going to definitely remove the word electoral in there.
Yes. So good. I mean,
Just
thank you
numbers.
for that clarification. So it'll just be Ward 1.
Councillor Lukey?
I was just going to say I was looking forward to the new name for my ward.
Any other discussion before we call the question on the amendment? Okay, I think we're ready for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Floor is still open. Any other discussion or amendments that we'd like to consider? I think this is tidying it up pretty good. All right, I think we're ready for the question on second reading as twice amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Third reading as amended would be in order. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, through your worship. I move that the bylaw be read a third and final time.
Seconded by Councillor Barry. Any further discussion? Seeing none, recorded vote required. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously, including Councillor Fawcett. And next item, please.
Is bylaw number 7334, which is an update to the downtown Brandon secondary plan.
And Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, through your worship. I move that bylaw number 7334 to amend downtown Brandon secondary plan bylaw number 7238 and zoning bylaw number 7124 to update certain land use permissions in downtown Brandon be read first time, rather.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Lupke. Again, first reading not normally discussed, so we're going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
Giving of notice, Your Worship?
Any giving of notice this evening? Not seeing any. Next item, please.
A motion to adjourn would be in order, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Barry, seconded by Councillor Chaboyer. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I didn't mention earlier that we've got this Association of Manitoba Municipalities Municipal Officials Conference in Brandon. We're always happy to have all those elected officials in town, which also attracts some members of government. Seeing the Federal Minister of Rural Development tomorrow morning, and we have several provincial cabinet ministers in town as well, so it's always good for us when that occurs. And I know I'll see some of you at the conference if time permits. Thank you all.